Hello and welcome back to Bigfoot Lake. Before we get too far along with tonight's story, I think it's appropriate to issue a viewer discretion notice. Some of the images that we'll be looking at tonight are a bit graphic in nature. However, it's impossible to tell this story without those images. If graphic images are not for you, perhaps this is a story that you'd be better off only listening to. With that said, thanks for joining us here tonight at Bigfoot Lake, and let's dive into tonight's mystery. Tonight's story is the tale of gruesome livestock mutilations, mostly being cattle and horses. These reports have been brought forward from around the world. So what is so extraordinary about these mutilations? Well, let's take just a few moments to look at a couple of these examples. Looking at these images, what is it about these mutilations? And is it really a widespread happening? The first widely reported case took place in Alamosa in 1967. This incident was so mysterious that it put the usually quiet San Luis Valley on the world map. A horse with the name Lady was found dead on a September morning. It was the condition in which she was found that raised alarms. Her head was stripped to the bone, flesh peeled back like a mask. There were razor-like cuts along her midsection. These cuts were so precise, it looked as if they could have been made with a laser. Even more, there was a strong chemical scent in the air. It smelled similar to acetone. Now for the strangest part of all. All of Lady's blood had been drained. There wasn't a drop in sight, not even on the ground. There was no smell of any decomposition, and even the natural predators, such as the local vultures or buzzards, they avoided Lady's body. The mystery gets even deeper. There were no footprints near Lady's body. And even more bizarre, Lady's footprints ended about 100 feet from her remains. How did she travel 100 feet without leaving tracks? Lady's owner, Nellie Lewis, was quoted by the local newspaper, the Valley Courier, as finding gelatin-like green globs and a piece of metal covered with horsehair. After touching these, Nellie Lewis stated that her hands began to burn and hurt until she washed them. Those materials were tested by the U.S. Forest Service and were found to be radioactive. The local sheriff tried to brush it off as a lightning strike and ended the investigation. Lady's death was the first of what would be thousands of cattle mutilation reports that began pouring in. It wasn't long after, in the 1970s, more than 200 reports were filed in eastern and southern Colorado alone in the San Luis Valley. These reports came from ranchers who were experts with cattle, and they knew something different was happening. Their reports detailed surgical-like cuts. The flesh wasn't torn, as it would have been from typical predators, such as a bear or a wolf or a coyote. It was like a scalpel was used to make the incisions. And that's only the beginning of the strangeness of their reports. Cattle were found with genitals removed, tongues cut off at the root, eyes and ears missing, and many of the incisions even appeared to have been cauterized. And this wasn't just happening in Colorado. Northern New Mexico also experienced the same mutilations, with many reports being filed. And this leads us back to perhaps the most disturbing detail of all. Just like as the case was with that horse named Lady, many of these cattle were completely drained of blood. And on top of that, there was no trace of blood on the ground near the cattle. How could full-grown cattle be siphoned of blood like that? This simply cannot be one of the local predators. It points to something more, and we'll get back to that here in a bit. By the 1980s, the mutilations had stopped for the most part, but in the mid-1990s, 27 cattle in northern New Mexico were mutilated in a 16-month period. And there were the exact same descriptions of the cattle. Genitals removed, along with the tongues, the eyes, and the ears. And also with the same laser-like cuts, which appeared to be cauterized. These mutilations are still being reported to this day. Many ranchers, they've given up and they aren't even reporting them anymore, out of frustration, and also because of skeptics who have been harassing them. These skeptics joke about coyotes with scalpels running around, and many of the mutilations get summarized as unexplainable once again. So with no natural explanation, some ranchers are looking at other possibilities. And after over 10,000 reports in the U.S. alone, I can't say that I blame them. One Colorado rancher, Manuel Sanchez, even consulted with a local paranormal investigator after his bull was mutilated. Could this be a paranormal phenomenon? Other eyewitnesses reports strange lights in the sky in the same areas the mutilations occurred. The reports just keep coming in. Even all the way up in Delta Junction, Alaska, there were cattle found missing their reproductive organs, their eyes. Very similar descriptions. In 2019, ranchers at the Silvies Valley Ranch in eastern Oregon found 5 bulls mutilated, again with the reproductive organs missing, and that telltale sign that they were drained of all their blood. These ranch owners offered a $25,000 reward and got no leads. These mutilations are costing ranchers thousands of dollars. There have been those even in the government who have called on the FBI to investigate the mutilations. We have Senator Harrison Schmitt, who was quoted as saying, "Either we've got a UFO situation or we've got a massive, massive conspiracy, which is enormously well funded." Even further, a New Mexico state trooper named Gabe Valdez investigated several mutilations and concluded these mutilations are the work of the U.S. government. Others have suggested satanic cults, possibly even other ranchers, and even UFOs. The mutilations were so horrific that Colorado Senator Floyd Haskell contacted the FBI to investigate. The FBI launched Operation Animal Mutilation in May of 1979. In one letter from the senator to the FBI, it reads, "For several months, my office has been receiving reports of cattle mutilations throughout Colorado and other western states. At least 130 cases in Colorado alone have been reported to local officials, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation has verified that the incidents have occurred for the last 2 years in 9 states. The ranchers and rural residents of Colorado are concerned and frightened by these incidents. The bizarre mutilations are frightening in themselves. In virtually all the cases, the left ear, the left eye, the rectum, and the sex organ of each animal has been cut away, and the blood drained from the carcass, with no traces of blood left on the ground and no footprints. So during the FBI's investigation, they came up with the final report, which detailed that the mutilations were due to natural causes. Interesting, right? So, case closed. Perhaps not. Furious ranchers, they refused to let it go. They insisted that the mutilations simply could not be explained away by natural occurrences. I mean, who would know their animals better than the ranch hands who took care of them every day? New theories started to come forward. Cult activity was one theory. Could these mutilations be part of satanic rituals? This time period of the early 70s was just after the infamous Manson family murders in 1969. Fear of satanic cults was at an all-time high. Could this just be a reaction to that? Another theory is that the mutilations are caused by government experiments. Perhaps researchers are harvesting these cows to develop biological weapons. It's a theory. Ever heard of Plum Island? Look into that place. Very interesting. But by far, the most widespread theory is that the mutilations are the work of aliens. Reports of high EMF readings, radiation readings, and strange soil samples are commonly reported. UFO sightings often correspond with mutilation. In some instances, it appears as if the animals are dropped from great heights, leaving compound skeletal fractures, which just can't be explained. Skeptics, however, say that no conclusive evidence has turned up in extraterrestrial investigations. So with all that being said, you are left to your best decision, and you have to do your own research and make up your own mind. But I will say one thing. If you ever find yourself in the San Luis Valley, take a moment to observe. Can you feel that stillness in the sounds, in the air? And for certain, keep an eye on the sky. It's quite possible a cattle mutilating predator might just be watching you. This concludes tonight's story. Let me know in the comments what you think. What could be happening with these cattle mutilations? What is your theory? What could be causing this phenomenon? Also, if you have a mysterious story you'd like us to share here on a future video, please reach out. We'd love to be part of it and love to share it with others. So, thanks for joining us tonight here at Bigfoot Lake. We hope you have a great night, and we'll see you next time.